Hello, Mr. Matthew. I'm Nidal bin Sheikh, and this is my presentation for the final year project. For the final year project, we are tasked to create a mastermind computer game where the player would try to guess the name of the fruit selected randomly by the computer. And in the end, he would be prompted by the number of attempts taken to correctly guess, number of correct guesses in the correct placement, and the correct guesses with the wrong placement. We also had a couple of requirements for this project, which are to include input and display data, lists, random choices from a list, if statement, relational and logical operators, loops, user-defined functions, and error handling with data validation. Firstly, for input and display data, the first example shows how I use the input for the start variable. Here, the user would input y in order for the game to start. Second example shows how I use the display using the print function to show all of the instructions for the user and explains how the game works for him. Finally, for the third example, shows how I use the input feature where the user would enter the guesses to the fruit variables. For the third example, shows for the first fruit guess. Secondly, for lists. In example 1, you can see how I create the list for the player's guesses. This is where the guesses will be appended to, and it will be used to compare it to the randomized list. And in the second example shows the first created list, which is the fruit list. This contains all of the fruits that will be used for the randomized list, and will also be used to randomize it. Now for the random choice feature, you can see in the first example, I imported the random library into my code and added it at the start of my code. This is used to help me randomize my guessing list. And the second example, you can see how I used it and the random features for the loop. So that it be used to create the randomized list. I use a lot of if statements in my code, and these are 2 examples of them. In the first one, it shows how I use the if statement to check the number of attempts in case it reached 15 or not. Where so it would tell the player that he ran out of chances, it would show him the randomized list, and would later quit the game. And the second example shows how I used it to check if the player's guesses were correct and in the correct placement, or correct and in the wrong placement. I also used a for loop to help with this as well. Now onto loops. I also use loops a lot. And first I use it to check the user's guesses and also to later append them to the guess list, the same one I showed you a couple of slides before. And the second loop I used it to check the number of tries, where to keep it running until it reaches 15 tries, then it would quit. And for the user-defined function, I used one function for the program, and I used it to contain the while loop for the start of the game that shows the instructions and the start input. And lastly, the error handling and data validation. Data validation is very important because it ensures all of the data that is inputted by the player is correct, and it keeps the program running smoothly. First example is data validation for the play variable. It checks if the player enters any invalid commands and would prompt him with an error message and would let him input again until he puts the correct inputs. And same thing for the second example, it is used for all of the guesses and will also show an error message and will keep repeating until the user enters the correct input. This is for the presentation. Now I will demonstrate my program for you. This is my Python code. You can see also I included a lot of comments in order for the programmer to understand all of the functions and the inputs. This here, as shown in the presentation, you can see all the instructions that come up at the start. After a while, shows you to enter your first guess. Let's say, for example, it will directly append it to the guest list and will take you directly to the second one. And the same will be done also to the rest of the guesses as well. Here it tells me that the number of correct guesses that are in the correct place are 0, which means I got none of them. But it tells me that I got 3 of the fruits correct. Now you can see after a couple of tries, I was able to guess all of them. And after you guess all of them, it tells you that you guessed it correctly, and it tells you exactly how many tries it took. For me right now, it took 11 tries. It would then also show you the correct guessing list, and will ask you if you would like to play again. If you don't want to play again, you can press N. I would quit the game. I would show you a prompt message. You can also see that if I enter any fruit that's outside of the suggested list, it will give you an error message. For example, if I would enter strawberry, it would tell you that it's a wrong input and tell you the fruits that you can enter from. All of my 15 tries, and I wasn't able to guess it correctly. So it would tell you, it will give you that you were not able to guess it correctly. It will also show you the correct guessing list. It would then ask you again if you would like to play or not. I don't want to play, so it would tell you, thank you for playing, and it would quit the program. Thank you for paying attention. I hope you were able to understand how it works, and have a good day. Thank you.